I even think about, I used to write you letters all the time, right? And I don't even think you know this. I used to write you letters all the time. And man,
It's hard to
I
talk
didn't
about.
expect to tell us.
You did a very good job of shielding me from everything that you were going through. And
Nobody wins in divorce, but the people that really know what it feels like when all hell breaks loose in a family is none other than the kids. And so today we have a very special guest, somebody near and dear to my heart, my daughter, my oldest daughter, Miss Morgan King. Come on, Pooh. What's up, baby girl?
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. And, I already shifted, right? I announced your government name, but I quickly shifted to your nickname, which is Pooh, right? Well, I first started calling you Pooh. It's a derivative of Puda, right? Because you used to poop when you was a baby. So, we got to start off with our dance. We got to do it. Poo to poo. What you gonna do? There we go. So, baby, I'm so thankful. I'm so honored from the bottom of my heart, baby. We just gonna have a conversation. You know how we do. We just gonna talk about it. But, in our relationship, a lot of people don't really realize that, I call you my oldest because you are my number one child. You was born 4 pounds, 10 ounces premature. And I'll never forget that day because your socks didn't even fit. You had to go to the NICU and everything. But me and your mother wasn't together then, right? We had split up, and all you've known is daddy gone. So we just gonna talk about that, the experience and everything, and just get some, just tell the people what's up. But so just tell them, you really didn't have me in the house, right? So I think we were separate. Even at your first birthday, we were separated. So how was that with not having me in the house ever?
right, so honestly, growing up, it was hard because I didn't have the two-parent household that, my peers had. Or, you see the two-parent household on TV, cartoons, and I started to compare my lifestyle to that. And I still at the time thought of you as super dad. You were very, very emotionally present throughout my entire life, while it was hard for you to be physically present.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected me in multiple different ways. We had multiple turning points in our relationships where, maybe things went downhill for a sec, maybe things were uphill. But I feel like our dynamic is, honestly, this is our dynamic. The hard conversations, the intimate, emotional conversations that we have between each other. I know I say multiple times that I call you when I need to talk intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, our values are the same. You are like my best friend, my twin, my father. And so honestly, there were some points in my life where I was like, man, like, I wish my dad was here.
Yeah.
And I know that, it probably was hard for you at some times too. And I do want to ask you that question. Did you ever feel like you were getting down on yourself because of the situation?
All the time, right? And there were some specific moments where I felt like I'd probably let my guard down and let you down. But starting out, right, being from Houston, we lived in Houston, and we weren't together then, and I was in the same city. Now, during that time, going through divorce breaks you, financially and everything else. So we are, going through a moment where financially I'm broken. Like
Right.
my credit is shot. Like, I go to people and say, hey, what can I buy with my credit like this? And they like, nothing. I go to somewhere else, like, what can I get? What kind of car can I get? No car. I couldn't get an apartment. So there were times when I did feel broken and I did question myself. But I specifically remember one of the toughest moments I had, and it was while I was still living in Houston. I didn't have a car, and I had a friend, really just a friend. She was just a friend, for real, just a friend. I used to call her nickname was L Boogie, right? And El Boogie, I didn't have a car and I was trying to get just a comforter for my bed. And I had to call her to pick me up from Target. This was before like Uber and all this other
Right.
stuff. And, you know, El Boogie, she was attractive, but she was just a friend. And I was like, I'm just so broken because I don't even have a car. Now, she picked me up from Target and dropped me off at my apartment at the time, which I needed help getting. And then I remember that weekend, it started raining. And I had to walk in the rain just to go see you.
Yeah.
And that hurt because I couldn't be with you and I didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of.
Right.
Didn't have any money. And I was like, I love my daughter so much that I had to walk in the rain just to see her. But I felt like I felt devastated. So absolutely. I even think about, I used to write you letters all the time. Right. And I don't even think you know this. I used to write you letters all the time. And man,
It's hard to
I
talk
didn't really
about.
expect to tell that story.
It's hard to talk about because I remember, I think I was like 4 or 5, and you did a very good job of shielding me from everything that you were going through. And you would take me to the children's museum every week. And it was the highlight of my weekend. The highlight of my weekend was just, you were in the city, you would pick me up, and we would just go to the children's museum, do the same exhibit, probably the little like business thing, every single weekend. And I didn't know it was because it was free.
Yeah.
And when I started to grow up and really understand the feelings that I was having towards you and, you know, the situation, and obviously like towards like my mom, then it was hard because I felt like, the best way I can compare it is, I felt like there was an angel and devil on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like there were just, I had 2 households,
Mm-hmm.
2, you know, maybe 2 Christmases. And I didn't always feel like, you know, I felt like maybe like imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Because it was really hard for me to feel like, you know, when that my lifestyle started becoming different after, like, especially like you moved.
Yeah.
And I was so young at that time. I remember the first time I came to see you in Dallas, I was maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And it was like meet halfway, and that's
Yeah. So I had to move. I didn't have at that time, you know, I had left corporate America, had run my own business for several years, and in the midst of the divorce, had to sell property and my properties and my partnership. Had to sell that off, and so I ended up taking smaller jobs. So I wasn't used to making the amount of money that I grown accustomed to. And then an opportunity came for me to go back to corporate, to the company that I left, IBM. And so, but I had to move to Dallas, and that was a tough thing, right? That was a tough thing. I remember by that time I bought a car, that Saab, right? I bought a Saab for like $8,000, and I went to Dallas. I moved to Dallas, and I didn't even have a place to stay. Right, I was living out of my Saab, but every other weekend or whatever, I would drive down, and I'd gotten other odd jobs in Dallas along with my corporate job to help make money. But I would drive down to spend time with you, and so it was tough though, because now, you know, if people don't know the distance between Houston and Dallas, it's really about 4.5, 5 hour drive. Right. And so I had to be further away from you, and I couldn't see you on a regular basis.
right.
Right. So, you know, to answer your question, yeah, there were some times I was hard on myself. Yeah, I was tough on myself. But you mentioned the 2 different households and everything. Because as time went on, we, I got back up. I wasn't homeless no more, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I moved on up like the Jeffersons, you
Yeah.
know. So I remember buying that first house, right? And it was a nice house. It was a big house,
Yeah.
right? But you talked about two households. How did like that really shape you, right? Because I know there were some things that we tried to do,
Mhm.
right, to help you feel comfortable. Because at that point you were my only child,
Right.
right? So how did that shape you?
It was honestly still pretty difficult
Mhm.
because, I'm in Houston and that's my everyday lifestyle. I go to school out there, play sports out there, and it was just me and my mom. And so because of that, I spent, it was hard. And then being coming to see you and then having the household be what it was like, the big house, the more things, or the church. And it really was conflicting when it came to finding out who I was and growing up, because I didn't know who to seek advice from or who to learn from. And there were times when obviously there were conflicting opinions. um and I don't think people realize that through divorce, that the things that are said
Yeah.
to the kids do truly affect um the perception of both parents, both parties in the situation. And it does become a lifelong effect on how
Yeah. Bump
somebody
that,
can.
Morgan. You came to my house.
Okay, wait. No, yeah, but you had a movie room and
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. So it was a totally different thing, but it was hard because I would leave.
Right, right.
And so I would be there for a week,
Hmm.
maybe a break, Christmas, and then I would go home. And it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Like we did not have all that. And so
So did you ever resent me for that?
I did not resent you until I felt like you had your own other family,
Yeah.
truly. And then I felt like I was forced out
Hmm.
to a sense because I'm your first child, but I was older. And then the family things that, maybe did start to go on, I still felt like I was pushed out to a sense that I wasn't really a part of that family. Like I was just an outsider.
Hmm.
And it was hard to deal with. And I know there was a time that like we did not really talk much.
Yeah.
And that was a reason. And it it does now. We have the dynamic where we talk about things, but when I was younger, we were not comfortable talking about things as much.
Yeah. You mentioned about some of the things in divorce that parents say, and even if it's just side conversations that they're having with friends or whatever,
Right.
kids hear, right?
Right.
I remember you coming up to Dallas and we were playing board games or whatever. And I don't know if you was like 5, 6, I don't know, but you was like, yeah, we playing Monopoly or whatever. And you was like, yeah, my daddy's a cheater. Mommy says you're a cheater. And I'm like, dang, we playing Monopoly, man. What the hell?
Right.
And I was like, that was the reality. I was like, dang, um, man, okay, I see what may be said. I could pick
Right.
up on what may be said around you, and also be mindful on what I might be saying.
Right.
Because you used it out of context, right? You used the
I,
right word.
I thought you were cheating at the board
You
game.
thought I was cheating at the board game because
Yeah.
I was a cheater, right? Because
Right.
that's word, right? So I'm like, dang, okay, wrong context, right word. I don't know how I
Right.
feel about that. But there came a time though, and I don't know if this was for you, but it was definitely a pivotal moment for me. There came a time where you asked me about what happened
Right.
with me and your mom, and I can't remember how old you were.
I was 12. I vividly remember that day. I remember I came to visit, and I don't remember exactly what we were doing at that time, but I walked up to you and I said, Dad, why did you and Mom get divorced? And you looked at me, and honestly, your face dropped. Like you were not expecting to have that conversation at that very moment. But you were very open to having the conversation. So you took me into my room, you sat me down, and it was the first time I saw you get emotional.
Mm.
And you told me, well, I was unfaithful to your mother. And I gained so much respect to you for you because I was 12 years old asking you hard, difficult adult questions. And you gave me the honest answer. And it didn't matter if it changed how I perceived you, but you wanted to be honest with me. So that was, I would say, the first turning point in our relationship where I felt like, man, like everything about my dad, like this is a man. Like this is a man. He can be honest with me at such a young age about something as that hurt me and every other party involved. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, it was just like you became like my best friend. Like I always was a daddy's girl.
Yeah, yeah.
But from the honesty that you gave me, it was just like, yeah, this is what I need. This is exactly what I want to hear from him. And this is I like the person that my dad is.
See, I didn't know how else to answer that, because prior to you, I was one way, right? I was one man, right? And then after you, had come in, and I was already going through transition, so I was now navigating being the man who God had called me to be, right? And so while at 12, no, I didn't expect to have that conversation, right? But 12 years old nowadays, I mean,
right, you can have a lot of conversations.
Yeah, just different type of experience. And so I was just like, man, this is what it is, and then we'll deal with whatever comes out of that. And I always said it was tough because I was always playing the long game with you. Right. Short term, I mean, you go through your teen years. I'm like, man, I just want to push you down a flight of stairs. You know what I'm saying?
And they were rough.
Yeah, but I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I'm playing the long game. And with the long game, I had to think like this: no matter what's said, right? And although that may have been true at that particular time, no matter what's said, she'll always have to reconcile her experience with me with what she's heard about me. And if they don't line up, she'll always gravitate to her experience with me.
Right.
So I had to always make sure that your experience with me was 100.
Right.
I got to be straight up with you. I got to, be loving. I got to be empathetic, be caring, and that's me, right? But I have to make sure that I don't, I don't lie, right? Let me just be open and honest, and then we'll deal with it at that point. So it was a pivotal moment for me too, because I wasn't expecting that. Right. So it sounds like it was a pivotal moment for you too.
Very much so, because, that transition, there were so many things that 12 years old, I became a teenager right after that. And I went through a lot as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And we had the relationship at that point where honesty and the way that you approached me was like, okay, we can talk about things. And I think that's like a huge part of like our dynamic now, mm-hmm. and why we're able to even do things like this. Yeah. Because our dynamic is hard conversations, hard topics, emotional topics. And that is always just straight up front off the gate. That's what we've had since I was able to process those type of emotions or feelings. And there were multiple turning points.
So what are some other turning points?
I would say most recently, mm-hmm. like in another positive upward shift was when you moved me into college. I was hugging you and Mom, and we were about to leave, and you said, you put your hand on my shoulder, and you said, I'm transitioning from provider and parent to advisor. You're going to make mistakes. You're in college, but it's like a mentor type mm-hmm. thing. Like I now had the confidence to share with you things that I would go through in young adulthood without fear of being punished. Mm-hmm. And there's things that I call you about, like I'm in college. There are things that I see and I call you about, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I call you for advice. And we are able to have those conversations now.
Because there was one time I was like, Morgan, you've been drinking. Were you drinking? I was like, Morgan, what the hell?
Hey.
I was like, ooh, woosah.
Hey, but I mean, we got we got through it, and those are like conversations that we were able to have. And I'm grateful for us to have those conversations, because there's people in college who drink and can't talk to their parents about it and go off the rails or have other issues. And so I was open and honest with you, being like, hey, like, and even though it's not like Okay.
So you remember the time? I'm gonna go back a little bit because
Okay.
you jumped up into the college one, but now it brings back some stories on some of those other moments, man. That there's not a book on this. I'm figuring it out. But one, um, when I realized that you were you were transitioning to a different level, was when I know what grade you were in, but I found out you was cussing at school. Right? You remember how I did that?
Cause I like the song Bad and Bougie.
Yeah, I was like, Morgan, what's your favorite song? You was like, ooh, Bad and Bougie. I was like, so you be cussing at school, huh? And he's like, nah, nah, nah. I'm like, sing the clean version. You didn't even know the clean version.
I didn't know the clean version.
Like, I know you be cussing at school. And so um, I had to give you grace and give you space, right? Because I think even at that time I was teaching. No, I wasn't teaching, but I had taught, on a collegiate level and everything. So I knew students and what they were doing. But I remembered my first time I cussed. I was in middle school. You know what I'm saying? And I cussed at a girl. And
what?
I remember, I know who she was too. I'm sorry, Stacey Curry. But we grew up together, and I cussed at her, and I took off running behind the lockers. And my best friend, Uncle Jerome, best friend, he was like, "Man, fool, what you doing?" I was like, "Man, I don't want God to strike me down." So I was hiding behind the lockers. And so, but then when I realized God didn't strike me down, boy, I was cussing like a sailor. I was like, what? But now we can have those talks.
Right.
I'm not giving you license to start cussing folks out.
No, yeah, I understood.
But we can have those talks. And so I had to give you grace because I remembered at that age what it was like for me. And sometimes we, as adults, we tend to forget that, right? We tend to get so high on our high horse, right? And we tend to forget what it was like to be a kid, right? So that was another moment for me. I had to just realize, okay, cool. And then another thing is, you were very active in basketball.
Very.
Right. And you were really good.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
I would like to think so. But like I also I hand that to you. Like a lot of the things, I grew up playing basketball. I grew up wanting to work in computer science because of you. I was 5 years old. Like, I want to go to Texas A&M, major computer science. I'm going to be an Aggie, gig 'em. Now, that is not where I go. I'm looking at the camera. Please do not confuse me. But, no hate, no shade. But I no longer am wanting to go there, and I do not major in computer science. Good. But I am very grateful for the influences that you had on the things that I like to do, like music. Mm-hmm. That is another bond that we share. And basketball, like you, I remember my high school, middle school playing, like coming to every game was hard for you. Obviously you lived in a different city, but you made it to the important ones. My 8th grade games, like my last one, like my first ever junior high game in 7th grade, you came. I remember I had 15 points, 4 steals, and like 7 assists.
Killing. And
I was just like, and then like every single game you were in attendance, killed it. Mm-hmm. My senior night, killed it. Like, and it was just like, that was just another thing that we shared. And I think that's a bond that like can't be broken.
Yeah. One of the things I've had to learn is not just to be vulnerable with being honest with you,
right?
But being sometimes this is really maybe hard for parents. Sometimes we got to let our kids prop us up. And I've been in situations to where I've had to let you prop me up. And that showed me how mature you had been. And it gave me peace about the journey. For example, actually, just the other day you had to prop me up because my knee went out, right?
Right.
And physically. I fell in the middle of the street. Right. Like, oh Lord, Morgan, help me to the car.
Yeah, physically prop you up.
But the one that really stands out is that I got so sick, and I was making that drive, and I've driven all across the country. And there's no drive worse than the drive from Dallas to Houston.
Absolutely.
That is probably the worst drive in the country.
Right.
And I was sick, and you didn't really know I was sick. And we used to always want to go to this restaurant when I came to visit. It was PDQ because you
Yep.
wanted chicken tenders.
Yep.
And we were going, and you didn't know, but I couldn't walk. Right. I got that sick, but I was going to make that drive.
Right.
And that was my first time where I felt like I'm showing weakness. I'm not super dad.
Right.
And you had to help me out the car and walk. And we didn't know the severity of the illness at the time.
Right.
We just knew that I was basically hobbled, couldn't walk. My body had gotten frail and everything. And it just really taught me the moment that, Chris, you've been sowing seeds and being consistent. Let her, because she's stronger than you think.
Right.
And so I appreciate that. Like, man, that was a tough moment. You know, to be broken
Yeah.
to the point where you got to depend on your child.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just something I've learned that, you know, we're not all together.
Right.
We're all here for one another. So thank you.
Absolutely. And it was hard for me because you're right. At the time, I did not know you were sick. And I remember I was just so happy. Because I remember I would come to Dallas and we would go to the same restaurant, PDQ, get chicken strips. And we found out they had one in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at this point in my life where I don't think I really was, I did not really necessarily want to just travel back and forth between the two cities all the time. And so you did make the trip. And I remember I saw you and you were so frail and I could tell that you were sick, but I was still so excited. And we had our dinner and we spent our time together and we talked like we do all the time. Just talked. I remember we sat in there for like 2 hours and we just talked. And when I saw you leave and you hugged me and you said bye, it hurt me so bad. Because you were sick and you were really sick. And I was hurting because of it. And I'm grateful now that you are healthy and well, we have the relationship that we do have, because that was a really, really hard point in your life. Like, and obviously me watching it, to me, you were always super dad. Never a single moment where you felt weak that I think you were weak. Ever. In my head, were you ever a weak man or anything to me? You have always been the strongest person I know. And there's a reason why, like, I try to emulate your strength, because it is an inspiration, whether that's me in school or sports or friendships, relationships. I remember I told you a few days ago that I really like watching you in your element, because I realize that's how I am in my element and that we are so similar. And I want to thank you for showing me how to be strong and deal with hardships in life, because I've seen you go through so much. And whether I was 2 years old and you were homeless, and whether I realized it or not, there is this consistency and pattern of strength and fatherhood that you have given me and my siblings, truly, that needs to be appreciated. And you are really that for a lot of people, whether it's a mentor, advisor. And I really do want to thank you, because it was hard seeing you like that, but seeing you come out of it was such a blessing. It was such a uplifting moment in my life, and honestly, I believe everybody's life who saw you get through what you went through. And I'm excited to continue to have conversations with you like this.
I appreciate that. You know, but you also went through your battles.
Very
Right.
much so.
So I don't know what grade this was. So most of your high school career was locked up in COVID, right? But I don't know what year this was, Morgan. I could have snatched.
Oh, I
up,
was 15
you know
years
what I'm
old.
talking
I was
about.
a sophomore
I
in
got
high
the
school.
call that you got arrested at
Yes,
school,
sir.
and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And you got, I was like, no, she in detention, right? They like, no, she got arrested. I was
Yep.
like, no, you mean like she in ISS, right? And like, no, slap the cuffs on and arrested. Like, you can just tell the people what you did.
So I was 15 years old, and this was during COVID. We had the option to go online or be in person. And I remember at the specific time I had switched from online to in person school because of the basketball season. And I still think of this as a cry for help. It was my first time trying any type of drug, and it was weed. And I took an edible, and I thought I made
On
it out
campus.
on campus. I thought I made it out, completely. The day had passed. I slept, woke up next day, went to class, and then somebody snitched, and me and a few of my teammates were in trouble. Now, granted, I was the only one who got arrested because I had the crumb and the bag still left on me.
No, they snitched.
No, they did snitch. They definitely snitched, but I was definitely was the only one that actually got arrested. But that was a hard time too because I felt like mentally I was battling things like depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
But at the time, I knew that I was undiagnosed, and this situation ultimately did lead me to being diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and it was a cry for help. And the way that we handled that, you know, was honestly that was pretty difficult. I mentally I was going through a lot, so obviously being stuck in a house anyways, and then the one time that I do go out to school, I get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I understood that it was the consequences of my actions, but because of the mental struggles that I was going through, it would just felt like it was an action that needed to happen for me to get the help that I needed.
And that's the thing I appreciate because, you know, we did get you the help that
Right.
you needed. I wasn't disappointed that you got arrested. I was more disappointed that you were still calling these fools your friends.
Right.
I was like, man, you got a long way to go. You call them your friends,
Right.
you know? And I was like, you realize your friends are the ones that told.
Right.
You know, and so that because you know, you live and learn, you live and you learn. And thank God we got past that and everything is good. But
Right.
I was like, we really have to teach you about relationships and friendships.
And that is a huge thing that even to this day, as mature and intellectual, as maturely and intellectually I can handle things, my relationships and the friendships that I have tend to be toxic. And I do think that has a lot to do with, you know, the difference and the split between not having two people in a household. Was never taught, I've never seen a healthy relationship in my life, romantic, platonic. And that translated to me when I started having these friendships and relationships that I would gravitate towards people who would hurt me and who were toxic. And it's now it's refreshing to, you know, now having my own things and my own independence to make my own decisions and look back at that and be like, okay, I don't want to get back into that position. So let me make better choices about, you know, the people I hang with or the people I choose to spend my time with. And it was, they weren't my friends.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't talk to many of those people now. You know, things change. And after that, it really put into perspective how I wanted my life to go. I did not want to end back in that situation. I did not want to sit in that cell again.
Yeah.
That was all I needed. That was my calling card. I sat there. I remember I didn't even want to play basketball anymore. I got a call from a new coach that was coming to my school, and she said, "Hey, there's a spot for you on this varsity team." I sat there. I started. I won Defensive Player of the Year 2 years in a row, my junior year and my senior year. And I went on to graduate high school and get accepted to plenty of universities and go to school. And I'm now 19 years old and I'm about to graduate college in a year.
Yeah, exactly. No, I commend you on how you bounced back. And, you know, it was also inspiring to me to see you do it. And I was proud, right? And I was proud to see, and I'm still proud to see you bounce back from that. I do want to shift a couple of gears though. And I remember you coming to me a while back And because we're going to shift into dating,
Right.
right? Because as a father of a young woman, that's a tough thing,
Right.
right? To just think about when you're able to date. I remember you coming, I don't remember what age, but I remember you coming to me and you said, Daddy, I got something to tell you. And I said, what's up, baby? And you said, I like white boys.
Right.
Right. And I started laughing. I was like, go ahead, girl, get you some good credit.
You were so
right?
happy.
You know,
So
I was like, yeah. And I even wrote a chapter about that. It's called Daddy, I Like White Boys in my last book, right? And just talking about that dynamic being Black and where we had come from and everything. But there was something else, you know,
Right.
leading on,
Right.
right? And later on you came out and you said, Daddy, I got something to tell you.
Right.
And what did you tell me?
I said, Dad, I like girls. And that's crazy because that whole time I was saying, Daddy, I like white boys. I knew. And it was something that I always knew, but it was always scared. And I think that it's important to talk about how we, navigated that together, because yet again, we were at PDQ and I said, Daddy, I gotta tell you something. I had a girlfriend at the time and I really liked her. And you were asking me questions. You had no idea what bisexuality was, being gay was. You had no idea what it meant, but you were curious. And you were very intentional.
Oh, not curious like I wanted to experience.
No. Not curious like you wanted to experience, but curious about me, and how it affected me and how I felt. And you truly were very intentional about the questions you asked, about how supportive you made me feel, because I never felt like I couldn't talk to you about those types of struggles that I was having, because now I primarily just date girls. And I've been in multiple relationships and we've had multiple conversations where I've had to be like, hey, I need advice. And you've met some of my past girlfriends and you have been a really pivotal part in giving me an outlet to talk about and share, the feelings or emotions that I may be going through, because it is hard. And I don't think people understand that it is hard for the kid as well, because to navigate that within themselves is its own struggle. Because you sit here and honestly, you see a society that doesn't accept you. And let's say your family doesn't accept you. Being not accepted by society and in your household is a conflicting place to be in.
It was really tough for me, right? Because growing up, right, that's the insult, right? It's like, nigga, you gay,
right? Exactly.
Or my Riley boys,
No, we used to say us too, my generation too.
That's just the insult, right? So growing up, you knew who the people were gay, and it was almost they were ostracized. Now later on, you find out more people, gay, but so it was a struggle. On top of that, it was a struggle because I was a pastor,
right?
And it's like you're staring this in the face, but it's like, well, what does that say about your household? What does it say about you? What does it say? And that's where I was like, I had to get out of my head,
right?
And I had to do it really quickly, because those thoughts was like, boom, 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 boom. What you gonna do? What you gonna say? What they gonna say about it? What kind of pastor are you? You the man of God, your child out here, And I had to get out of my head, and I said, you know what? If I don't respond lovingly and correctly, I could lose her forever.
Right.
Like in that moment, that split decision can change the dynamic of this.
Right.
Right. That was a pivotal moment. And I was like, what do I want? I can't lose my child forever.
Right.
Right. And, it's like I heard God just say, love her. Right. Love her. And what does that look like? I don't know. But it definitely means getting out my own way, getting out my own head, and just like, okay, well, Morgan, what does that mean?
Right.
What does that look like? And then stop asking myself questions of stuff like, well, what happens if, you want to do that? We're going to deal with this right now.
Right.
And in every moment, I'm like, love her, because you're so valuable. You're still so valuable to me that I couldn't lose you in that moment. And still to this day. Now, part of it I have to think about, be like, okay, if she was talking about a boy, would I feel differently? Sometimes no. Because
Right.
I'd want to slap that dude upside his head too. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Or I'd be like, Morgan, what you
Yeah.
thinking? So sometimes the response would be natural on either side. But right now, I know that there's so many parents out there that's just trying to figure out, okay, my child is just told me this, or may not even have the relationship with their child, so the child can be open and honest.
Right.
How do I navigate that? And there's no book on it, but I feel like our relationship has grown closer because of how we
How
navigated that moment.
Absolutely. It has definitely brought us a lot closer together because you have given me an outlet to say, hey, this is something that I'm struggling with. And hey, this is something I need help with. And I think it was hard because you were a pastor. So honestly, you hear all the time from the Christian faith, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a time in my life where I was sitting there and I was like, I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to approach you because I thought you would think that I was wrong. And the way that you reacted and you chose to love me gave me the strength that I was like, okay, this for me, this is who I am. And nobody can sit here and tell me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can sit here and love me throughout, what you believe in and your faith, then I don't care what anybody else thinks. And it gave me that strength because we do have that relationship now. It's like I'm 19 years old. I am and starting to get into serious relationships. I am in a serious relationship, and we have those conversations of what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it wasn't your intention to show me how to like treat a woman,
Mm-hmm.
but you have. And I do want to commend you for, showing respect and, vulnerability in your relationships in a way that has, shown to me what it means to be communicative, patient, gentle, and try and have a healthy relationship now as I am transitioning into being an adult. And I definitely think for other parents that it is something that they can look forward to and just that second of thinking before you react.
Yeah, and you have to think, what's the main thing?
Right.
The main thing in this case was not who you're with,
Right.
because I've seen toxic relationships
Between a man and
regardless.
a woman, right.
And so let me work on that foundation. Right now, is it my preference? No.
Right.
And we understand that.
Right.
Right. But do I love you? Without a doubt.
Right.
Right. So let me focus on that main thing and let me demonstrate how to have healthy relationships. Let me demonstrate, Morgan, okay, let's set some boundaries, right? So that you don't allow people to, run over you and those types of things. And, just let God, right? Just have his, I just give him to you, right?
Right.
I've learned to cover you, right? When I told you, hey, I'm going from provider to advisor, I'm learning more how to cover you. And my prayer, even this morning, my prayer was, God, shower her with her own experiences of you.
Right.
Right. I don't want to control those experiences, because if you have your own experiences and now you're saying, Dad, okay, I want to go to church. I can't wait to get back and go to church and want to experience this. And you're calling me now talking about the experiences in God that you're having. Right. I just set the foundation.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about healthy relationships in general.
Right.
Right. If you were dating a man and he was abusing you, would I be happier? Hell no. Right. I might catch a case.
Right.
I probably won't catch a case against a woman because I'm like, okay, I can't go beat her up. You know what I'm saying? But I teach you how to fight. Right. But it's what's the main thing, right? And the main thing is like, look, I'm here to just love you and really show you and guide you how to have healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, and help you discover more. Because yes, you're coming into who you are, but trust me, that is a lifelong process. You continue to learn that, right? So I have to continue to provide opportunities for you to discover that and really come into your own, whatever that is, right? So as far as what everybody else says, it becomes noise. screw y'all, right? It's just noise. Now it's just us.
Yeah.
Because when it's all said and done, it's still gonna be us.
And it helped me with my relationship with God, truly, because I felt so, honestly, like I just felt like I could not be gay and love God the way that I love God. Because that's it's people preach hate sometimes. And when that's all you're hearing, it's just boom, 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 boom. And since I've, grown up and gone to college, I have found a different, you know, whether it's a man or a woman, I want a relationship centered in Christ, period. I have tried to find a church family at like within my college. I've joined religious organizations on campus. I have gone to church with my, partners, and that is something that I'm still actively searching for, is a better relationship with Christ despite what everybody else says or how they interpret his words, because I do believe that he loves me, period. Period. That simple. And it doesn't deter me away from my relationship with him. It doesn't deter me away from my relationship with you. It doesn't, it's quite literally me as a person. I love God. I love my father, and I just happen to like girls as well. And that's how I have to think about it, because especially now, there are so many things going on around us that are hateful.
Mm-hmm.
And people can use their religion as an excuse. And there's times in my life where that has beat me down, but there's also times where God has been like, get up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important that, that is a consistent path that I try to walk on. And I'm glad that I have the relationship with you to where like you're like, okay, we can talk about this, because I've had multiple conversations with you about like how I feel regarding my sexuality and being a part of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it is I think it is my calling card to do things like this with you, to speak or have these conversations about God. I love these type of conversations, and to share my story or my testimony, because those times in my life were really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hearing so much from everybody, people I cared about. I lost friends, lost family, and those relationships broke, and those excuses were because this can't happen. God can't accept this. And it was so hard, because even though I didn't grow up in a house with you, I still, when I went to your house, I still was wanting to be involved in church, wanting to do those types of things, and coming into my own myself. I remember I started doing Bible studies within myself and devotionals. And I remember I called you earlier in the semester and was like, hey, I joined this religious organization on campus. And I broke down, man. I broke down, and it was my turning point. And I'm honestly so grateful of my walk with God, even though it may not be the same as everybody else's. But I think it is really important to listen and to still keep the big picture in mind, because there are so many things that individuals go through where they lose sight of what matters, especially when it comes to things like sexuality, because people have their own opinions and are honestly very vocal with their opinions in our society. And it is just important to continue to love each other despite that, because I really do think God is important.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Morgan. And I think that's a place where we can just rest and plant the flag right there. I do want to ask you, is there anything I can do better?
Honestly, Dad, no. When I say super dad, I mean it. And that's full transparency, because even now, I have my own car, pay my own stuff, but I call you, I'm like, Dad, I need help. You help me as best as you can. And that's all truly I can ask for at this point in my life, is for you to advise me be a mentor, and continue to give me opportunities. That's exactly what you do. And I'm so appreciative to you for being as emotionally present as you were, even though it was hard for you to be physically present. And everything that you did was to continue to take care of me and my siblings the best that we could. And you are a model that I tend to want to follow. And when it comes to fellowship or talking and speaking and the things that you do, I aspire to have the impact that you have, because the impact that you've had on me is so important. And I just want to say thank you.
Wow. Well, I thank you, Morgan. I just asked you if you'd be willing to share your story. Right. We've been crying this whole episode. I don't even know what to say. I just want to, there've been some nuggets here. And as I, speak to everybody watching, nobody wins in divorce. There's always somebody, everybody gets affected and the kids get affected. But at the root of it, there has to be love. And, scripture says, if you can't love your brother whom you see every day, how can you say that you love God whom you don't see? And so, Morgan, I love you, sweetie.
I love you too.
I love you. Before we get out of here, tell them how they can find you. Now, don't y'all be DMing my daughter.
Please do not. Please do not.
But tell them how they can find you.
But you can find me on Instagram, MorganKing_13. Also, as well as my LinkedIn. If anybody would like to bless me, that would be greatly appreciated. Morgan King on LinkedIn. I am in search for business management internships, as well as a job after graduation, if that is, something that y'all would like to provide.
Tell them, no, that's something they gonna provide.
Yes, please, actually. I am deeply in search, so I appreciate it.
Good deal. Thank you so much, Pooh.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Everybody, this has just been a wonderful episode with me and my daughter, Morgan King. I thank you for joining us. I thank you for all of your support. Go out there, follow us on all the socials, WAHBL Podcast, WAHBL Podcast. When all hell breaks loose, I'm telling you, we don't have a magic wand. We don't have all the answers. We're figuring this out along the way, but we're giving you healthy tips on how to thrive during life's toughest challenges when all hell breaks loose. I'm telling you, go tell your friends, tell your neighbors, even tell your enemies, but tell them with love to go check us out. Like, subscribe us, share it with your friends, and everybody, y'all be blessed. We love you.